Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Community Living Ontario webinar, Supporting and Building Decision-Making Capacity. This is part two of a two-part series. My name is Sean Pegg. I'm Director of Social Policy and Strategic Initiatives at Community Living Ontario. Just before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So closed captioning is available. The option should be inside the More button in Zoom. You just have to click on Captions. We will be recording the webinar and it will be available on the CLO YouTube channel early next week. If you missed last week's webinar, Protecting Rights and Increasing Control, you can find the recording on our YouTube channel, and I would highly recommend it. It includes the story of a woman, Teresa Hartchild, who was denied choice and control over her own life and who was placed in a nursing home against her will. Luckily, she was basically broken out of that nursing home by her sister. It's a really amazing story, and it identifies a lot of issues that people face on a pretty wide basis in Ontario on issues of choice control and decision making. And that webinar also includes valuable legal information and advice from Stephanie Dixon, a partner at Porn Law. And that will be up for about a month from today. So whereas last week we focused on what can go wrong when it comes to choice, control, and decision making, this week we're focusing more on what can go right. I'm joined by Janet Cleese, who is Executive Director of Durham Family Resources. Durham Family Resources is a family-centered, social role valorization anchored resource and support center for families interested in building good, ordinary lives in community for and with their family members with a disability. Janet is also a valued longtime contributor to and member of Community Living Ontario. Janet is joined by Tracy McGillivray, who is a family member associated with Durham Family Resources. Tracy has been thinking about and implementing steps toward a full life for her son, TJ, for many years, with support and ideas from various DFR people and connections. Tracy was part of the Equal Right to Decide project and has taken on an advisory role in speaking with other families on this issue, as well as many others. We were going to be joined by Amy Sweet and Diane Oak in Windsor, but unfortunately, Amy was called away on a family matter, so we will work to bring Amy and Diane's stories to our network in the near future. So while we're scheduled to go until 1:30, we'll just go until about 1 o'clock today. I also want to thank Eon Sinclair and Tenzin Kondo for technical assistance today. So before I hand it over to Janet and Tracy, I just want to talk a little bit about the Equal Right to Decide project. So both of our speakers were key players in this project, along with leaders and participants from Community Living Dryden and Sioux Lookout, Brockville and District Association for Community Involvement, Community Living Windsor, and Windsor Essex Brokerage for Personal Supports. This project resulted in the creation of a series of documents focused on choice, control, and decision-making, and these are all available on the CLO website. They include a document titled Supported Decision-Making in Action. This document offers an in-depth look at how the organizations that participated in the Equal Right to Decide project support people to take control of their lives and make decisions. So that's probably enough talking from me, and I will hand it over to Janet and Tracy.
Great. Thank you, Sean. I'm just going to get right to sharing my screen. How is that looking? Great.
That's great, Janet.
Okay. I'm missing everyone's faces, but that's okay. Let me just get started. So Sean's given, a great introduction as to who we are, and in general, I just want to add a couple of things. Sean, that was an awesome job, but I want to say that we work in partnership with families all of the time, which means that we don't provide programs and services on behalf of families. We always are doing it, supporting families, taking the lead on these kinds of things. And that's just important because it informed how we were going to be involved in this project. And we're really what I want to focus on is when we say the word family, we always mean the person in the context of their chosen family, where their voice can be heard and augmented and safeguarded. And so that's really important when people hear us say family, that we have every member of the family in mind, with the person and their voice at the core. And so because of this, in our project, we naturally wanted to work again in partnership with families to think more deeply about decision-making capacity and families. And in the end, 10 families formally took part in the project, along with a family-led advisory committee. But there was what we consider a bigger splash affecting other families and the rest of the organization in ways that we didn't even understand at the outset. Lots of people learned a lot from the involvement of those 10 families. And so beyond the 10 families, there were conversations and events that were open to many other families. And the staff team learned and shared with each other, and then with other families. There was lots of family-to-family learning. So the ideas didn't remain simply with those 10 families. And the 10 families themselves, we really selected for a range of ages, a range of support and communication support requirements, a diversity of ethnocultural backgrounds, time spent so far with the FR. Some had been with us for a long time, and other people were fairly new to us. And you know, how much the family had thought about these things, in particular as their family member, as a decision maker or not. And there was a range in that as well. So we really thought that it would be representative of many, many kinds of family thinking. And within DFR, we have long talked about shared decision-making, but I would say that this project really helped us to deepen our thinking and maybe shift our expectations in really looking at the decision-making capacity of every person. And let me just tell you that long reflective conversations were part of our journey at all times. So early on, we really thought about how do we all make decisions, and we kind of learned or realized really that we all seek support from others in making the decisions in our lives, and that the fact there is nothing more natural than seeking support in making important or even very small decisions in our lives. And this was really instrumental to kind of our thinking about how this was kind of going to move on and go forward. And what we realized is that we all tap into the people around us when making choices and decisions, and we seek ideas and advice and approval and counsel, and we sift through what we've got and we move forward in the ways that we choose to move forward. Where we regret a decision or wish that we had taken a different route, sometimes we live and learn, and sometimes we have to work really hard to recover from that. We notice that how much advice or support that one seeks to make a decision depends on lots of things: personality, opportunity, experience, the type of decision, and more. So it doesn't really depend on the mental capacity of any one of us. We thought that some very knowledgeable people with tons of information seek support all of the time in their decision making, and other people with really little experience and a lot of confidence don't ask for assistance very much at all. So you know, I just think about this for everyone in the room at the moment. You know, how do we all make decisions and choices in our lives? You know, think about your past week. What decisions have you been making? Who did you seek for advice, ideas, or support after the fact? Who do you wish you had asked for support, or what do you wish you had followed? Those are all opportunities that we had. So those are things to keep on thinking about. And to instill in us this idea that it's very, very natural. And so then, you know, Audrey Cole, who is just like a kind of pierce the issue to the core when she says, so why is it that we all make decisions with others every day, but it's only folks with cognitive impairment, people with disabilities that are bound by law to prove that they can do so alone. And so this contradiction really became the focus of our project. Together with families, we started out by questioning this very premise. How is it that in the eyes of the law, many people in our society, it's believed that people with disabilities need special help to make most of their decisions, and that there are simply many bigger decisions that they can't make at all? How does this come about? And then secondly, we thought, if it's natural to seek support in our decision making, where does this all start? Where does the learning, where do we do this? And naturally, for many, many people, if most people, hopefully, it starts at home, and it starts within the family for most of us. So for us, a family centric organization, this became like a real opportunity to see what we might do to maximize the opportunities. At the same time, the families were really clear that that's so hard to do when they constantly hear from education and the health sector and everyone else in the neighborhood about the challenges and deficits and gaps and lacks in their children. And so we thought it might be important to give some support in pushing back. And so what we decided, part of pushing back, we would just presume that everyone had capacity. And when we think of capacity in terms of a will and preference, that people have a preferred way of doing things, and they have desires that are different from one another, even in the same family, in the same household, that we thought we could well presume capacity, and that everyone then had a contribution to make to society. And at the same time, that we needed to understand that any vulnerability in decision making, which is what everyone worries about around people with disabilities. Oh my goodness, they're not going to be safe when they make all these decisions on their own. But the vulnerability in decision making comes from isolation and lack of relationship, rather than from a lack of a perceived capacity. So that was important for us to put down. And so together we wrote out some principles, because families felt they're bombarded with messages all of the time about the lack of capacity of their sons and daughters. And we thought we would have some guidelines in place to remind us that people, that we're working by presuming capacity. And what did we mean by this? We wanted to have a list of statements that would keep us centered when things started to get a bit ragged at the edges. So the principles were very simple: that we all want a leading role in our own lives. We all desire full, authentic life where we govern, influence, and direct according to our own values, regardless of our ability or the supports that we require. All people have will and preference. Different things matter to different people, but they do matter. We are always communicating our will and preferences. And so, all actions have communication value. People are always trying to tell others what's important to them in whatever ways that they can. There is no sole way to support that capacity. Interventions and supports would be designed one person at a time, and not based on any standardized labels or diagnosis. And it's best to follow typical pathways. If everyone gets support or seeks support in making their decisions in life, why don't we just kind of follow those typical pathways? And decision making should reflect the way that most people typically make decisions. What's the process they follow? And these are really powerful pathways, because they're tried and true over time by people who lead really, really good lives. The next thing is that we did is we wrote out, so that was our guidelines to make sure we kept on presuming everyone had capacity. And the second thing we did is kind of, what were the guidelines to say, how are decisions made in general? If we just look kind of at how good decision making, what are aspects of decision making that are true, these would also be a guideline for us as we went through. And so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but a few people make decisions completely independently. We've said that. We choose who to approach when looking for input, and it could be different people from for different decisions. And sometimes it's paid professionals, and sometimes it's best friends and partners and family members. And sometimes it's just an influencer down the street who looks pretty cool and you want to know, how they got that look, for example. And we typically learn to make decisions through trial and error and learning. There is dignity in risk taking. The fact is, none of us always take the safest option, the best option. And when we take an option that could be dangerous, we can well expect a person who cares about us to intervene and negotiate with us to take a slightly safer option. And our loved ones are there to guide and advise us. We really thought that when we look at decision making, that it involves both the heart and the head, and sometimes we just don't make the most logical decision. And then decisions are often made in the context of other people, the people who are important, taking them into consideration and how much this impacts them and or includes them or gains their approval or not. Not solely, but it's a factor. We believe that everyone has a right to change their mind on almost all decisions, and people have different styles of doing that. And at the same time, realistically, we all have limitations in our everyday options. Not everyone can have every career they might have wanted, travel to all the countries. There are realistic options, but the difference is we don't expect to be limited by discriminatory practices or legislation. That seems to be the game changer. So these were really helpful whenever we kind of said, oh, this is a different scenario because my son, because my daughter. We would look to these and say, could we figure out the most kind of typical pathways, and where does that fall here? And so one of the great discoveries then is that we really felt that we're not teaching people to be capable and learn to make decisions. We were really discovering the evolving ways in which the people, the sons and daughters in the family, the sisters and brothers, in which the people were already indicating their will, preferences, and their desires and directions. This was really, really exciting, that it was a discovery process and not a teaching process. And so most of the project, in between discussions, conversations, and occasional events, families just went on with their lives, maybe with some new ideas, with some new guidelines about what decision making is, and some good ideas, reminders about presuming capacity. And what came out of it was lots and lots of moments of discovery. I think one of the big things was that there's a whole process that we thought that all of us went through. The families will speak to this, but learning to make decisions is a process, and it's affected by opportunities and guidance and positive learning from something gone awry, possibly. But the process is, we need to expect people to be decision makers. We need to expect that they have the capacity to be involved in the decisions of their lives. And that's a mind shift. That's a change when the expectations around were not so. And then once you start to expect that your son or daughter, your family member, is a decision maker, you begin to, or you need to begin to notice, how does that come out for this person? How is it that this person is already communicating their will, desires, and preferences? And many families found that communication had been happening all along, but because they didn't expect it, they didn't notice it happening. And then thirdly, they needed to recognize it for what it was. When she does this consistently, when she pushes people away like this, actually, she is letting us know what is important to her, what she wants in this circumstance. And we have to recognize that as decision-making communication. And we need to acknowledge it out loud for yourself, for the person themselves, and for others. And then families understood that in their family responsibilities and opportunities, they then could nurture and provide much more latitude, many more opportunities for people to engage in making decisions in their lives. And all of that would be continually repeated and shared with other people, because it really, what we're in is a process of helping not just the family, but the people in the neighborhood, people in community, to understand the decision-making capabilities, the decision-making roles that people actually have in their lives. And so as we provided opportunities for the families to reflect and learn, They spoke of their own learning and growth, and how they spoke, and their articulation of their learning was really amazing, and culminated in CLO offering us the opportunity to do some videoing. And so we have 9 short videos of each family speaking of their experience, and they in themselves are really, really awesome. And in addition to that, we have 3 what we call compilation videos, which are several of the families speaking on a theme. So right now, first of all, Tracy is going to talk about her own journey with TJ and their family in terms of beginning to recognize and support his capacity as a decision maker. And then after that, we will watch one of those 3 compilation videos. So Tracy, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Janet. Hello, my name's Tracy, and the pictures of my son, my youngest son, TJ. He is 28 years old. He loves to cook, listen to music, go on walks, and he really enjoys relaxing in the hot tub. He is a wonderful son and brother. TJ is a helpful neighbor. He volunteers in his community and is loved and appreciated by many. This all may sound really good, but things haven't always gone so great for TJ. TJ has some very complex medical conditions that have been very difficult to figure out and address over the years. So I wanted to share a little bit about TJ's journey with you and some of what was learned along the way. So TJ does not use words to communicate. And often when people find this out, they can also assume that he's got nothing to say. But the truth is, TJ has lots to say. And he typically lets people know his wants and his needs through nonverbal cues, facial expressions, and by using his communication device. We've also come to realize that all of TJ's behavior is communication and his voice to us. When TJ was a lot younger, things were very difficult for him, and we tried hard, really trying to help him to fit in everywhere, and especially at school. He had gone through so many different medication trials, thinking that if he was just a little happier and a little calmer, things would be better for him there. But unfortunately, none of that worked, and medications made things even more difficult for him. So we needed to stop them. It was very easy at that time to just do everything for TJ. At school, everything was pre-planned and scheduled for him. And at home, he had his routines and we stuck to them. On the outside, it appeared like TJ really didn't understand anything and that he couldn't do very much for himself at all. It seemed to us like TJ was feeling so unwell a lot of the time. So we often would default to make decisions for him and choices for him. My husband and I were trying our best to figure it all out for TJ, but it wasn't easy. And it was extremely difficult for us to know what TJ's triggers were, what he liked, what he wanted to do. And oftentimes we were just guessing and praying that we were getting it right some of the time for him. When the anxiety of school finally ended and TJ was able to just be at home with us, we slowly were able to figure out some of the health issues. And we are also provided at that time an opportunity to be part of the Recognizing Capacity Project through DFR. And this really helped us to see TJ in a different light. We began to really listen to TJ, noticing the different ways that he was letting us know things. We surrounded him with a support team that were able to really get to know TJ well and understand the way he communicated and expressed himself. Really, all of us just began to follow TJ's lead. In 2020, TJ moved into his own home. We felt that by giving TJ his own space, that he would really be able to develop more autonomy in his life. It was a really big transition for him, but also a very positive one. Together with TJ's support team, we began to expect more from TJ. We started to ask him for input on planning his day, his preferred activities, what he wanted to cook, where he wanted to go, and how he wanted to spend his time. We also started expecting a response from him, and we would just wait, giving him the time that he needed to think and respond. It was really quite an adjustment for everyone to expect a response from him all the time and not to just assume how he was feeling or dictating what activity was best for him to do next. Most times, TJ requires more information when asking him to make a choice. And now we all understand that oftentimes TJ may not respond immediately, but instead he responds when he's ready after thinking about the question. This is where a lot of support, his support team, come into play and help him to navigate through some of the decisions that he's making. As we began letting TJ take the lead in his own life, we started to notice just how many decisions that he was able to actually make throughout the day. And we were really surprised. All of us were surprised. He was making decisions using his communication device, choosing what he wanted to wear, what pool he wanted to swim at, what shows he wanted to watch on TV, and on it went. With support, TJ began doing his own cooking, laundry, helping with chores around his house, and really choosing when and how much physical activity his body could tolerate. Those of us who really know TJ well had to make a conscious effort to ensure that we were not always assuming that we knew what TJ wanted and needed. And we began to recognize TJ's ability to speak for himself. As we listened to TJ, he was able to let us know when he was done an activity or when he wanted to go home. And now that we were really paying attention to TJ and allowing him to make his own decisions, he became much happier. TJ also began to use the word no in his communication device, which was a game changer for him and everybody else, because people were no longer forcing him to do activities that his body just couldn't tolerate. You know, it was really sad for me to realize that for so many years, TJ had been trying very hard to follow along with the preferred activities of others at school and at home, whether his body could tolerate it or not, causing so much pain for him. And even though we had good intentions, TJ was not being listened to. But now that his voice is being heard and he's making choices, he is smiling a lot more and the anxiety has decreased significantly. TJ really notices now that people are recognizing him as a real person with capacity. And you can tell by his facial expressions that he's very happy that people are interested in what he has to say. We found out that TJ has lots to say if people really want to listen to him. Over the past 4 years, TJ's capacity has grown so much. And TJ is now planning his days along with support. Once TJ understands what's possible for him in the day, he is more than happy to choose what he wants to do, what he wants to cook, where he'd like to go, and also very importantly, when he would like to be left alone. So we've also seen that since he's been being listened to and included in decision-making, his confidence in himself has grown so much. This past year, TJ has been making progress in discovering his capabilities and has become a volunteer in his community. He is so excited about these jobs, and the people that he's met volunteering have brought so much joy to his life. TJ volunteers at a yoga studio once a week, watering the plants and flowers. And since TJ loves water, this job has been super exciting for him. And it also has given him a way to connect with others and contribute to their lives. He also volunteers at his local church, putting the envelopes in the pews. And he's been welcomed and appreciated there. And this has only increased his confidence in his abilities. 5 years ago, all of what I'm talking and sharing with you all seemed like it would be impossible for TJ. especially to us as his family. But now we're looking for other places where he can contribute. And by allowing TJ to take the lead in his own life, we have seen the miraculous change, and every day he is growing in his ability to decide, to say no, and to change his mind. We've learned that by assuming TJ's capacity, taking the time to listen deeply to TJ and supporting him in his way of communicating, that TJ is more capable than we had ever thought possible. TJ continues to surprise us every day, and he lets us know what's important to him in his life. And we're so very proud of him. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. That was wonderful. I'm always struck by, in particular, the moments when you understood that he had the kind of knowledge within around how to use his energy and how to support his own health, but nobody was listening or not able to listen. And in fact, he's very wise about how much energy he has and how he needs to spread that throughout his day.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, really. He's really talking a lot now, and he's making things clearer and clearer for everybody around him. So it's really good.
Yeah. So that the idea of expecting capacity and then noticing and then recognizing and calling it decision making, calling it his will and what he wants to do, and then sharing that with others, that you just illustrated that so well.
Thank you.
And so what we wanted to do is there'll be a few minutes for questions and comments. People can comment in the chat anytime, but questions at the end. But I think what I'm going to do is kind of move into, this is one of 3 videos. This one is focusing on the impact of the person taking the lead from the family's point of view. And the 2 others, one focuses on the importance of relationship, and the third one is the family members talking about it begins with me, and it begins with changes in my own mindset, and a little bit of that comes out of this one as well. So let's listen in, and then we'll have a few questions. That was me, sorry.
Recognizing capacity starts with the assumption that all people have will, preferences, and can be decision makers in their own lives. We start with the idea that there is nothing more natural than seeking support from others when we make decisions. People with disabilities are not seen as having the capacity to make decisions. The Recognizing Capacity Project offers families an opportunity to explore, notice, and articulate important ideas around the decision-making capability of their loved one. When attention is paid to noticing and making space for the person to be in the lead, families speak to the impact they have seen on their loved one's confidence, identity, and sense of recognition and respect.
Well, he's more involved in the conversation. And he claps to encourage the people to keep doing what they're doing. And I could see on his facial expression, how he was probably thinking, oh, yes, you got it, you understand, that's what I mean.
We've noticed a huge impact on TJ. His anxiety levels have come down so much. And he's actually now becoming more confident in his own abilities to make decisions, because we're now listening to him, waiting for him to respond.
I think she always sort of second-guessed herself. She looked for us for that guidance and those decisions to be made for her. Now she's got that confidence, and she knows that there's supports there, but she knows bottom line, it's her decision.
Her confidence has improved, has increased dramatically since she realized that, oh, I can make decisions by myself.
He's driving the bus. He's the one making the choices. So those can be small choices in day-to-day life, or they could be big choices, and they're all very important.
What surprised me, maybe it shouldn't have, but what surprised me was that as Tiffany got older, she became more emphatic about what she wanted and what she didn't want. You know, for many years it seemed like she was pretty satisfied with how things were working. But I think, and I don't think it's unusual, that as people get older, they become more discriminating around what it is that they want and what they don't want in their life. And I see that happening with Tiffany.
I think he's really grown. I think he's really bloomed in being respected to run his own life a little bit more than what he ever has in the past. And I think that not only will serve him well right now, but when I'm thinking down the road, you know, obviously he's going to need to be responsible for himself in a lot of different ways in the future.
If you don't have a voice, people are always stepping in to speak for you, right? They're kind of trying to fill in the gaps all the time. He doesn't like that. And I think how frustrating that would be for him. And I don't think people see it as robbing him of an opportunity because they think they're being helpful.
I think he's happier too, to know that we listen to him and we ask his opinion, which was something we had never done. And Philip is 39 years old, and it's a relief also because I'm aging and I won't be always there to do everything for him.
Thomas is a very multifaceted person when it comes to communicating. He's happier when it happens, when he gets to take the lead.
She's not a victim. She's someone who's quite opinionated. We lock horns occasionally because she knows what she wants. When she does express, when you actually do what she wants to do, she lets you know, I'm happy.
You know, he would try everything at his disposal, words, sounds, actions, leading the person to what he was talking about. And so, we made a huge effort. So when they finally got it, you could see this relief on him and just thrilled that they understood.
Since we've been listening to Jade and allowing her to be her own decision maker, life is just, it's better. There are less conflicts. I find that Jade is calmer. I find I'm calmer.
Really recognizing that he's growing and changing, he's learning. He likes different things this year than he did last year, and he's able to change his mind, and it actually takes a lot of pressure off of me, because now he's the one kind of taking the lead in his own decisions.
I think it's giving her a really big sense of accomplishment, of self. Now we're able to show her what's the possibility and encouraging her to make those decisions.
This process has allowed her to become a person. Before, Jade was just there, just being seen but never heard.
First, families noticed and made space for the decision-making capacity and wisdom of their family members. Now, families are delighted to describe the positive changes that they see as a result. Confident people with a sense of their own self will build better lives for themselves and enjoy mutual relationships with their families and communities.
Great. We can take a moment if people want to put any comments in the chat. That would be really wonderful. Just every time I hear it, I hear different things, and I hope that people are understanding that a lot of these kind of conclusions that families have come out of lots and lots of reflective process, right? Lots of opportunities to try things. And at the very, very beginning of all of that is that expecting differently, expecting to see capacity, communication, a willingness to move one's life in one way or the other. Oh, yeah,
So Janet, we did have one, we've had one question for Tracy. The question was, did TJ's communication methods change as he gained confidence?
What we really noticed a lot was that, I mean, we've always been working on some, the augmentative communication with him. But we noticed that people weren't always listening. So as we started to really listen to him, he was able, what we noticed in him was that, okay, now people are actually listening to me. So he just, it just took off. All his behavior, all this negative behavior that we would be seeing, we'd also notice that that was him communicating. Once people were really listening and expecting him to communicate, I don't think he felt like people were expecting an answer. People were still asking him things, but then they would just go on and do other things and plan for him. Things really changed for him. His communication, now he's communicating more effectively, more often, because he's feeling more confident in himself. So, yeah, I mean, everything kind of exploded when people were listening and watching and, looking at him like, I'm expecting, like you're a real person, I'm expecting you to respond to me. So I think that really changed a lot for him.
Thanks, Tracy. Janet, there's also a question, will the videos be available to share?
Yeah, like the 9 individual family ones, which is 1 per 9 of the families that wanted to do that, are available almost immediately. I can give you the contact information, Sean, for that. And then these 3 compilation ones were just we just really want to situate them in a context with a few questions that are really helpful. We're just putting the final bits on those, and they'll be available as well. So.
Okay, thanks,
and we're also keen to understand who's wanting to use them and what context and what's the feedback, because it was just such a strong learning journey.
Tracy, I have a question for you. You talked about reducing the number of medications that TJ was on and how medications would often make things worse. I think there's still a widespread feeling that if people are behaving in a certain way, that adding medication is going to help. Can you talk a bit more about that journey for your family and for TJ?
Well, for us, like years and years ago, I didn't have the internet. Like he's 28 now, so at the beginning, I wasn't looking anything up. You're just going by a lot of information from your family doctor. So I was just putting him on and following the instructions for the doctor, anxiety medications and all of these things. We had no idea that the side effects of these medications were causing him so much pain. They would often be causing a lot of side effects that he couldn't articulate to us. And, it was just by weaning him off that we kind of noticed how much these medications were actually affecting him. So yeah, it was, and really after we get off of these medications, really listening to him and going along, trying to help him to communicate, that's when his communication really exploded too. But yeah, it was a learning experience for us. It was, I always think, gosh, the years that he went through all of this kind of trauma. But he's doing much better now and more and better than we could ever have imagined. At one point, we could never imagine off medication. But now he's doing much, much better. And we're just listening to him a lot more now. So yeah, it was a journey though, a long journey. It was not easy for him.
Yeah. You know,
So, oh,
I
Janet,
just want to say
so,
that the journey with chronic pain and medical issues is a long journey for everyone, but most people get the back and forth to figure out medication or not. And it took a long time for you to understand that TJ could be a part of that as well.
For sure. Yes. Yeah.
so we're not taking questions verbally, but if you do have questions or comments, please share them in the chat. Just because of time restrictions.
There was
Now,
a question about the length of the project, Sean. So it was like in theory a 3-year project. We've just never stopped because we have the videos now. We have the families with all of their information. They continue to meet with other families. We show the videos within the family groups we have. So it's just it's kind of like a mind shift. So yeah, the formal project was 3 years, but our learning just kind of continues.
and a big part of the project was identifying barriers to decision making that still exist in Ontario. So I'm wondering, Janet or Tracy, you know, if there's something that comes to mind, are there barriers that you continue to face, Tracy, either with TJ or Janet in your work, that prevent you from recognizing people's capacity and honoring their decision making?
Well, Sean, I have a few more slides to share on those kind of things, because there's still more that, you know, people can kind of consciously do. But there is also the biggest barriers is people who don't expect or recognize that capacity. And that could be a bank manager, that could be a landlord, you know, that could be an insurance broker person, right? And so, you know, and it's partly lacking the legislation, but it's very greatly, we have had opportunities to engage with bank managers who kind of were on that mental capacity wagon. And when we presented people differently or talked about their full life in a different way, they had no problem beginning that kind of banking process with the person. So hugely is community mindset. But the legislation, of course, is that, you know, that safeguard that's in there, that's not there. So it's a little bit of a free fall. So Tracy, do you have anything to add? And then I'll go on to the bit that I just would finish up with.
Not just sometimes, like some really basic things, like even going to the doctor, you know, or going places, and people are often talking to the support person rather than the individual themselves. So we're really trying to change that wherever he goes now, you know, that people are directed to speak to him, even at the doctor, you know, and people are recognizing him, that he has a voice and he's a real person, and you can talk to him and expect something back. You know, just kind of teaching people in the community that he does have a voice. That was kind of what we've been working on a lot lately too.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Julie. Sorry, I didn't see Deanna. Deanna, do you have a question or a comment? Deanna McEnroy. Tenzin or Eon, can we unmute Deanna? Sometimes Zoom makes this a little bit difficult.
Sorry, what was the full name?
Deanna, I think
Deanna should be unmuted. Hi, Deanna, are you with us?
Yep, she is. Deanna, I see you made some comments in the chat. We appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. welcome. Thank you for being with us, Janet. Janet, do you want to move forward with more slides?
Sure. Just let me finish up here. Yeah, so you know, in that process that I talked about, expect, notice, you know, recognize, articulate, nurture, and share. Share is really important because we've come to understand that the capacity and ability of people to be involved in and directing their own lives begins with this expectation that they have the capacity and the interest, and then look for it. And so what we're really doing is becoming more conscious about what are we putting into the hearts and minds of other people with every single interaction, as we're walking down the street, as we're walking into the bank, as we're, you know, talking to someone, talking down to someone, talking as an equal. And every one of those actions makes an impact on our community's understanding and ability to think that this is a person with capacity. So that was really so impactful for us. And we started even thinking, and Tracy, this was a great line through your story, that the difference between TJ learning choices and then those choices being put together and seen in terms of we don't live our life through choices, but it's how we govern our lives. And so decisions are an expression of one's values that one makes over time. So that was a learning that we had as well. We also thought like that there are things that really do lead to poor decisions. And that's when a person is forced, this is true for all of us, right? When the person has no trusted relationships, when they have little experience, when they don't trust through life experiences, perhaps when they feel controlled, when they have little say in other parts of their lives, when they don't feel listened to. And so we know the conditions under which, and most of those we can do something about. We can build in small steps over time. And then we developed this, this is long, I'm not going to go through it all, but we have like 2 slides of people's capacity is more likely to be recognized at the bank, at the landlord, at places in community, at the voting booth, wherever it is, under certain conditions. And so what families did is they just kind of kept telling us, oh, when I do this, we don't even talk about that he doesn't have capacity. It doesn't even come up as much, right? And so when people are really present to enact their decisions, when those accompanying them model the presumed capacity, you know, so where are they walking alongside the person? Where are they speaking for the person? Where are they, you know, leaving the person right behind? That doesn't model that this person has capacity. Whereas if the person goes first and they're learn to introduce themselves or hand over their card in some way and just take part in the transaction, people are less likely to be seen as not decision makers. So there's a whole list of these. We really teach people, family members, but also paid supporters about the importance of a positive introduction right from the get-go. It's not, you know, like, this is John, he has Down syndrome, he can't write, but he still wants to open a bank account. It's, you know, this is John, he's lived in the neighborhood in his own apartment for the last 5 years, and he's here to open a bank account. Like a whole different mindset, that you're different messages you're putting into the mind of the teller. You know, one, you go find the bank manager to see if this is allowed, and the other one, you begin to look at the paperwork. And it's not 100%, but more likely. When you think about what are potential questions or barriers in advance. So we've really worked for the whole banking thing. It's been a long time since anyone's been denied a bank among our families, a bank account, because we now know what questions to anticipate and how to deal with them. Other things are you know, emphasizing not just the fact that they want to open a bank account or have a lease on this apartment or whatever, but who are they in their lives? So that's that positive introduction, emphasizing their valued roles and their contributions already. When people you know, have many opportunities to learn and even take some risk and even make some decisions where the outcomes aren't what they had wanted, and kind of like all of us, we learn in that way. And where safeguards, are typical and ordinary. So in some banking situations, if it's an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old and it's their very first bank account, it may not be unusual that it's a co-signed account for a short period of time, and you take steps after that. There's other ways, of course, of limiting, a lot of damage financially if you have a limited pay card or whatever. But families found it really helpful to understand the conditions under which their sons and daughters, their family members are more likely to be recognized. And then lastly, I just want to say, these were the emerging themes that those last two slides are setting people up for success. That's what we have learned to do, how to kind of get it right from the get-go. The value of taking time for reflection. Like, this is what we've learned, hearing from other families, the families speaking to each other and realizing, oh, I think I've learned that too. I just didn't notice it, right? And then it's there. And then hugely importantly is the third one there, when the capacity of the family around the person, and to expect, notice, listen, augment, acknowledge, and then respect the person's decision. When the capacity of the other family members and the other allies and the paid support people, when that capacity is increased, then people grow in their decision making roles and strengths. It's like they're just waiting to be, have some of the restraints taken off of their life and their decision making, right? And it's the more there is growth in the people around the person, the more you'll have growth in the person as a decision maker in their own life. Families, the third video is a lovely compilation of comments from families about learning to let go, right? To move back, to give space, and their family members walking into that. And then lastly, the value of coming together. We could not have done this project if we didn't and have these outcomes if we didn't bring families together to talk it through again and again and share their learning with each other. It wouldn't have been nearly as powerful at all. And so, in recognizing capacity, we saw families, allies, and dedicated supporter. And we have a lot of influence in how and whether a person is seen as having capacity and assumed to be involved in the decisions of their lives. There's much we can do without policies and laws, of course. Those are going to be needed. Those are needed as safeguards, but we don't have to wait around for that. There is so much that we can do right now to set people up for success. And in success, more and more community members will see people as decision makers. And we think that will be a huge part of the push for people's legal capacity being recognized. Thank you. That's all I had, Sean.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing this information with us today. I inevitably learn something new from you every time I chat with you about this stuff, Janet. So I really do appreciate it. And Tracy, I think you speak so well about your son and how your support of him has changed. So I hugely appreciate that. I want to apologize to Deanna. When Deanna said, please read loud, I thought she was asking us to talk louder. I think she wanted us to read her comment aloud. I can't read the whole thing, but I see that Deanna was talking about her school experience and her career experience, and the fact that she moved out from her parents' house in the 1990s. So Deanna, thank you so much for sharing that, and my apologies for misinterpreting your comment about just being louder. You meant read it aloud. And thanks, folks, for chiming in to make that clear. So I do want to end this around one. So I'd just like, before we sign off, I'd like to invite our CEO, Chris Beasley, to provide some closing comments.
Great, thanks, Sean. So thanks everyone for being here today. Thank you, Janet and Tracy and TJ for sharing your experience and your acquired wisdom. Thanks, TJ, for teaching us. I think one thing I learned was learning to listen with your eyes. That it's not all with our ears, and how people communicate in various ways. And if we take the time to wait and listen with our eyes, we can get a whole lot of information. So that was helpful. I love the expect, nurture, recognize, expect, notice, recognize, nurture, and share. There's no, but what's that? NRNSA, that's the snappy acronym. Yeah, won't go there. Okay. But really something that, needs to stay as we, go forward on this path and look at the possibilities. Possibilities, I mean, Community Living Ontario, that's our tagline, inspiring possibilities. If you take something away from this that triggers something in you, either as a support person, as a person with that lived experience, as a family member, how might we think differently? And what would it take to maybe just take one little step? And what might that look like? And just planting those seeds. I think the videos, I've seen all the videos that Janet and the families put together. They're awesome. So I highly recommend you watching those. And thank you again to everyone for being here. Again, the last webinar was maybe some of the the downsides when people aren't recognized and seen and noticed and nurtured, right, along that path of decision making. So that and then here we see what can happen when people are seen and recognized and nurtured and are able to share their wills and preference. So thank you everyone for being here. Thanks Sean for organizing and Eon for tech assist. I think Tenzin's on here too. Thanks Tenzin. Again, Janet, Tracy, TJ, and everyone involved with the project at DFR. Well done. Really appreciate it. And that's it. Have a good afternoon, everyone.